The graduation address gives us the opportunity to hear from a distinguished member of our alumni community, and we're fortunate today the address will be delivered by Ms. Sue Noble. Ms. Noble has experience working with all three levels of government, professional associations and peak bodies, the not-for-profit sector, corporations, universities, sporting organisations, and of course the community. She is also a passionate volunteer, and I heard about this just before coming on stage today. Ms. Noble began her career as a public librarian over 34 years ago before moving into senior marketing, business development and managerial roles in various membership organisations and peak bodies. She is currently, indeed just 3 weeks ago I think you were appointed, the Director, Member and Partner Engagement with the Victorian branch of the Institute of Public Administration Australia. She also serves on the boards of the Victorian Institute of Sport and Softball Victoria and chairs the Central Queensland University's Regional Engagement Committee. I now have much pleasure in inviting Ms. Sue Noble to deliver today's graduation address.
Thank you for including me here today. It's an amazing experience for me. To the Chancellor, Mr. Simon McKeon, the Deputy Vice-Chancellor and Vice President Global Engagement, Professor Abid Khan, to the members of the faculty here today, to you, our very special guests, our new Monash graduates, at this incredibly important, momentous time in your life, and to your friends and family, many of whom I know have travelled a long, long way to be here. Welcome. I'd also like to acknowledge the people of the Kulin Nation, the traditional custodians of the land on which we celebrate today, and pay my respects to them, to their elders, to their culture, their elders past and present. I am greatly honoured to be here today, and I'm especially delighted because being here celebrating with you actually makes up for a large omission in my life. For some reason, lost in the mist of time, I don't remember why, but I actually missed my own graduation ceremony at Monash University. So it's actually sensational to be here with you today. The irony is, of course, I was in the arts faculty, and I think engineering and IT were on the other side of the campus, so I probably never would have met any of you had we been studying at the same time. But as the Chancellor has given away my secret, it was about 34 years ago that I was studying here, in fact even longer. When I was thinking about what I wanted to say to you today, I thought I'd share with you some of my memories of Monash because it is very dear to me, but I'd also reflect on my career, which has been varied, as I think the Chancellor's introduction indicated, and hopefully you might find some of what I've got to say of use or encouraging. And I also want to share with you some thoughts on volunteering, which is very dear to my heart, and how volunteering might support you in the development of your career. And I've also got a smattering of other insights and wisdom that I've gained from others. So I don't present myself as the font of all knowledge or a role model, heaven forbid. I mean, I'm here in this room with some amazingly talented people, so who am I to sort of put myself up there and say, listen to me, but hopefully you'll get something out of what I've got to say. So firstly, my time at Monash. Okay, I've been to Monash, I've had involvement with Monash 4 times, and it has been life-changing. Every time I've been here, it has been life-changing for me. I first came here to study economics and politics straight from what was then high school, and I was a pretty lousy student. In fact, I was a terrible student. I must have been the worst student ever to feebly and unenthusiastically attempt statistics. Again, ironic, given most of you are probably maths geniuses. I just could not master statistics. And poor Professor Frierson, who was who headed up that statistics back in the day with his South Melbourne pre-Sydney Football Club, South Melbourne footy jumper and socks. He was very patient with me. So while I didn't gain much from my attempts at studying statistics, those 2 years at Monash, attempting to do economics and politics, were in fact eye-opening and life-changing for me. I found it a very expansive, energising and exciting experience. I'd come straight out of high school and I'd had a reasonably sheltered, I guess, upbringing, and coming to Monash was just, you know, it was an extraordinary place. I was exposed to new ideas and new ways of seeing the world. I discovered things like union nights. I hope you still have union nights here. Now, no one will understand what this next reference is, the Indelible Mertzeps. Now, who here knows who the Indelible Mertzeps were? They're a band, and they used to play in this very hall. So I used to come and watch the bands that were playing in this hall. I discovered the Notting Hill Hotel just down the road, and I also discovered surfing, which was where I was actually led astray, because I actually dropped out and went to live the surfing life down at Phillip Island after my first 2 years at Monash. I have to say, though, my second stint at Monash, I was a much better student. I came back to Monash after being away for about 5 years, and I think at that stage the university caught on that I was never going to be any good at statistics. There was no point persevering with me in that area, so I was actually able to move across to the arts faculty where I studied history and philosophy. It was in these 2 years that I was taught by two amazing people who were academic superstars and who had a profound impact on me. The first was my philosophy lecturer, Professor Peter Singer. Some of you may know his name. He of practical ethics, of animal liberation, and more recently, effective altruism, which I'll come back to. The second person who had a profound effect on me was Professor Bill Kent, who has sadly passed away. Professor Kent taught Renaissance Florentine history, a long way from engineering and a long way from IT, I know, but he was a leader in his field. He was a superstar, and he introduced me to a Renaissance historian, statesman, political thinker, and contemporary of Machiavelli named Francesco Guglielmini. So I'll come back a little bit later in my presentation to talk about effective altruism and Guglielmini. My third time at Monash was to do a Masters in Librarianship. I'd been a public librarian for a number of years and I was thinking about what I wanted to do going forward. I wasn't quite sure, but I decided to start a Masters in Librarianship. I was a part-time student and in full-time employment. And while I enjoyed and actually managed to complete the coursework, I did decide during that time that I wanted to move out of librarianship as much as I loved it and into marketing and business development. So I didn't actually ever manage to finish that Masters. Nevertheless, the university has forgiven me and re-engaged with me, and here I am now for my fourth time. In the last few months, I've had the absolute privilege of being invited back on a number of occasions to meet with students, to speak with students, and to look at how I, as an alumna, can contribute to the university that gave so much to me. So I guess in summary, if I can just summarise my university experience, my time at Monash provided what in my mind every great university should provide. It provided a great academic experience, the chance to experiment, to try and fail and try again. It exposed me to a diversity of people, a diversity of thinking and different viewpoints. I had lots of fun, I made lots of new friends, and I developed a lot of new ideas and a lot more opportunities open to me that otherwise might not have come my way. So I hope during your time here at Monash, you were also able to take full advantage of the university and all it has to offer. And this is just the beginning of a lifelong relationship with the university, a step along the way to a richly rewarding lifelong relationship with the university. So that was my time at Monash, not necessarily covered in the greatest of glory while I was here, but now for my career. It's my experience and the experience of many people I know that with the greatest will and planning in the world, most careers cannot be predicted and will not go according to plan. To quote Gujardini, who I mentioned before, "It's not in every man's power to choose the rank and employment which he would have, but thou must often do what thy fate shall offer thee." In my career, fate, or as I prefer to call it, serendipity, has played a large part. My career has been serendipitous. Serendipity and serendipitous, what great words. They just sort of roll off the tongue. They sound magical and they sound thrilling, as their origin suggests. Serendip, I don't know whether there's anyone from Sri Lanka in the room today, but serendip is purported to be the old Persian name for Sri Lanka. Apparently, the word serendipity was first coined by Horace Walpole in 1754 and was taken from the Persian fairy tale The Three Princes of Serendip, the heroes of which were always making discoveries by accident and sagacity, I can't pronounce that word, of things they were not in quest of. And John Barth, in The Last Voyage of Somebody, the Sailor, states, "You don't reach serendip by plotting a course for it. You have to set out in good faith for elsewhere and lose your bearings serendipitously." So this serendipity sounds like a mantra for modern adventure travel, which I love and have embraced. And it also is a mantra, I think, for careers. While there is a significant element of fate and chance in serendipity, to take full advantage, you have to be receptive. You have to be open-minded. You have to be a little courageous, perhaps a wee bit contrary, and to have insight to see and seize the opportunity and to be really ready, willing and able to act. When I started my career, I had a vague notion that I wanted to be a librarian, and I was for 7 years. My next career move into national marketing was serendipitous. I was working in library promotion in a voluntary capacity outside of my job, and I met the incumbent marketing manager from a library supply firm. When she resigned, she actually recommended to me to the CEO to a marketing role. I didn't have a marketing degree. I just was interested in promotion, and I had really strong connections in the library sector. So she recommended me for this role, and the role was not advertised, and I got the role. It was not planned. I certainly had not intended to move out of libraries in that way into marketing. My next career move was also serendipitous. I met a recruitment consultant when I applied for another job that didn't eventuate, but the consultant and I clicked, and she recommended me for a role at CPA Australia. And they offered me a job in the Victorian office. But before I even started in that role, I was asked to take on a national project, which quickly morphed into the National Marketing and Business Development Manager role. So I ended up with a great 5-year career at CPA Australia, which was totally unplanned and unsought, completely serendipitous, completely by chance. A few years later, after a 7-year sojourn in marketing in the legal sector, I applied for the role of CEO of Softball Australia, a national sporting organisation. I remember when I was considering applying for this role, someone said to me that they'd known of people who had tried to get into sport management for years, who had studied sport and played sport, and here I was, this upstart trying to get into this CEO role. But what I didn't know, and the other thing is too that sport, they tend to employ people from sport in sport. What I didn't know when I applied for this role, that the sport had decided that they wanted someone from outside of sport. They wanted someone to bring in different thinking, different experience, different attitude. So I actually got that job. So my timing was completely serendipitous. I applied for the right job with the right organisation at the right time and was interviewed by the right people, and I ignored the wrong people, the people that weren't going to give me the right advice. So So that's some examples of my serendipitous career, but I'm not alone. I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and he was telling me about his career, which was also serendipitous. His journey was a little bit different. He's of Sri Lankan descent from Malaysia. His father had been a High Court judge in Malaysia. They had migrated to Australia, to Perth, when he was 7 years old, and he'd worked as a docker on the Fremantle ports. He decided to study law because for all the wrong reasons, and they're his words, I think primarily because of his father's background, and he became a lawyer and a litigator in the UK. Now he is a match referee with Cricket Australia here in Australia. So his career, he had started off down one track, and because of different circumstances, different timing, different stages in his life, he chose a different path than where, and he's now somewhere else other than where he might have imagined himself once. So he and I are not unalike. We're a bit like the three princes of Serendip, who started off heading somewhere and ended up somewhere else by chance. So my last role was at CEO at Volunteering Victoria, and this is where I lead to my final thoughts to you today. When I started at Volunteering Victoria, I had a reasonable understanding of the extent, importance and value of volunteering, but I was wrong. I grossly underestimated how important and pervasive volunteering is. It's all-encompassing, and volunteering is incredibly important to a vibrant and sustainable society, more important than I could possibly have imagined, and I suspect many of you could imagine. I mean, volunteering is all around us. Almost all aspects of our lives, no matter where we live in the world, are the beneficiaries of volunteering, both skilled volunteering and unskilled volunteering. So you think about emergency services, sport, the arts, health services, education, community services, religion, the environment, animals, animal welfare, professional services, the list goes on and on and on. Volunteering, it could be pro bono volunteering, and many of you could potentially become pro bono volunteers given your experiences and your skills. And volunteering contributes billions to the Australian economy, let alone the world economy. In fact, one estimate puts the value of volunteering, the annual value of volunteering, at $291 billion, not million, $1 billion, the annual value. But the value of volunteering should not just be limited to dollars, not just restricted and reduced to dollars. In many respects, and this is what I found in particular when I was still working at Volunteering Victoria, the true value of volunteering is its importance to our social fabric, and to the health and well-being of our community, the sustainability of our community, and in many ways that benefit is immeasurable. I know people try to put dollar values on it, but a lot of it is in fact immeasurable. I see volunteering as active citizenship, and volunteers as active citizens who, through the giving of their time and their talent, have the power to transform lives. You have the power to transform lives. You have the power to transform your communities. You have the power to influence and transform the world we live in, whether it's through the talent and the experience and the skills you've developed while you've been here at Monash, or it's just because you want to get out there and help in some other way. And the value of volunteering has recently been recognised by the United Nations as playing a really critical role in the UN's 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And I urge you to have a look at those Sustainable Development Goals, because I know a lot of people think volunteering is about the community sector and doesn't apply to a lot of other areas that they might be interested in, but you would be surprised at how broad those goals are and the role that volunteering, and potentially you with your experience and skills and your interests, can play. So, but it's not only organisations and the recipients of the volunteering effort and the causes and activities that are the beneficiaries of the volunteering effort that that benefit from volunteering, research clearly highlights that you, as volunteers, can receive enormous benefits from your volunteering effort. You probably know this already, and I suspect many of you are already volunteers in one way, shape or form, so perhaps I'm telling you something that you know already and you don't need me to tell you again, but I will anyway. But volunteering can support your employability and career options through skill development, practical work experience and networking. There is research that highlights that employers really value people who have significant volunteering experience because it suggests to them that you are willing to give over and above and beyond what you're paid to do. It demonstrates proactivity and interest and engagement and a willingness to contribute. So volunteering can help you on your career pathway, all along your career pathway, wherever serendipity takes you. Volunteering also provides really significant health and wellbeing benefits. I know many of you here are international students, and there's been work done here in Victoria about how to support international students becoming more engaged and involved in the Victorian community through volunteering. It is a way of connecting and integrating. It is a way of mitigating isolation and loneliness if that's something that you or others around you know and experience. And volunteering is really, really important for building those social connections. So I urge you throughout your serendipitous career to consider giving your time and talent back to your communities, wherever your communities might be, whether that be in Australia or back home if you're an international student. I urge you to think about giving something back, because it's not only giving something back to your community, it's giving something back to you and for the effort that you've put in. It will make a big difference to you. My own volunteering experience includes professional and community volunteering, and that has definitely helped me on my career. My first move out of public librarianship, I've already mentioned, it was because I was working as a volunteer that I met a person who was able to serendipitously help me into my next career move. But my most a highlight for me in my brief stint as a volunteer, I should say, was a brief stint in Malawi in the Lilongwe Wildlife Centre, where for a short time I was the adoptive mother of a baby baboon, which I named Bilbo Baggins. It was very hard, hot and messy work, but it was incredibly satisfying. He was an orphan baboon, and like all primates, he needed a mother. But before he could be introduced to other baboons, there was a long process of introduction, and he needed to be medically checked out also because we didn't want to transmit diseases from one animal to the next. So the role of a mother was incredibly important. It didn't help me at all in getting my next job, but boy, it's been a really good story to tell about how something like that, something that is so disconnected from my normal life, can be so satisfying. So I urge you all to think, I'm sure you've all got incredibly diverse interests and experience. There will be something out there for you so that you can use your interests, experience and talents as volunteers. So to conclude, please allow time and space in your life and your career plans for serendipity. You never know where it might lead. Also allow time and space for the giving of your time and talent through volunteering, because, again, to quote Gujardini, the return we reap from generous actions is not always evident. And in the words of Peter Singer, in one of his most recent books, do the most good you can do. Thank you. Thank you.